Necromancer, far have you wandered?
This Bone Splinters build is out of control. It destroys every type of content in this game, dealing 1 billion DPS against bosses and absolutely demolishing hordes, all without ever needing a single uber unique. This build is fast, it does insane damage, it's tanky, and it's unlike anything in this entire game. So let's go into the gear breakdown and I can show you exactly what's making this build so strong. So I won't be talking too much about the specific subsets I'm running as my gear is kind of bad, but I will have a build planner in the description that will show you what you should be running. So first, let's look into what makes this build work. In our necklace, we have Shattered Spirit. This says that whenever you cast Bone Spirit, you cast 18 Bone Splinters in all directions. What this means is when you sit inside the boss's hitbox, all 18 of those shards will damage the boss. And those shards get boosted from the Bone Splinters projectile cast twice, meaning we don't just get 18, we get more than that. And on top of that, they're also getting the Shard of Ethereal buffs. I don't have a max roll on this, but if you had a max roll on this, you'd be seeing even more damage than you saw in the intro. Now, it might look weird that I'm running Shaco instead of the new Crown of Lucian, but there's a weird interaction between Crown of Lucian, Shard of Ethereal, and the Shattered Spirit. And that's because Shattered Spirit actually doesn't cost essence, despite having the essence on Shard of Ethereal. This is because this is considered a free cast, so it won't trigger things that have on-cast abilities. And unfortunately, Crown of Lucian only works when the original thing that you're casting has essence. So because of that, I'm choosing to run Shaco, but you can absolutely swap this for any rare helmet of your choice. Uber uniques are not required. And in our chestplate, we're running Shielding Storm. We are a Bone Storm build, so it would make sense to have Shielding Storm in the build somewhere. Now, if you had Tyrell's Might, I would definitely recommend running it over a chestplate like this and moving Shielding Storm into the legs, but a chestplate like this is totally fine. I ended up opting for Essence per second, which helps a little bit with the Great Feast cost. It's not really mandatory, but it is nice, and Great Feast is a very, very good multiplier for the build, so just alleviating that a little bit is very good. And in our pants, we're running Hardened Bones to give us the damage reduction. Now, the biggest thing about pants is you want ranks to Bone Splinters on them, and you want them with a greater affix. This is going to give you a lot more damage that I currently don't have, so if you have that, you're getting a lot more damage than you saw in the intro. After that, in our boots, we're running Ghostwalker. So this is probably one of the most important things about the build. I'll get into it later when we get into the mechanics breakdown, but you want to be able to get your hitbox inside the boss's hitbox, and a lot of times, that's really hard to do. And Ghostwalker is how we do it, because we'll proc Unstoppable with Blood Mist, and we come out of Blood Mist, we're able to walk inside of the boss or inside of an elite pack, and it lets us get all of our damage off. This is non-negotiable, you need Ghostwalker. After that, we're running Moonrise. This is by far the best aspect in the entire game for any basic attack build, and we use it to full strength. The attack speed helps us cast Bone Spirits more often, the basic attack bonus gives us huge damage on our Bone Splinters. It's just perfect. And then finally, we're running Grasping Veins. You know, get a 40% damage modifier, get the crit rate. It feels good. Now, one thing I do want to talk about though is these tempers, these rapid ossification tempers. I have them on both of my rings, and on my necklace I have Bone Spirit cooldown. You do not need a Bone Spirit cooldown after you hit Shaco, but until you hit Shaco, you do want 1 roll of Bone Spirit cooldown and 2 rolls of rapid ossification. These rapid ossifications are going to keep your Bone Storm up 100% of the time, so definitely pick those up and make sure that you're grabbing the right tempers in the right places. Another very important temper is these lucky hit chance to freeze. So in Season 5, they buffed the lucky hit of these Bone Splinters. And when you're proccing this many Bone Splinters on a boss this fast, it means you stun a boss so quickly. So you want to make, and I'll break this down in more detail when we get into the gameplay mechanics, but I wanted to point out these tempers in specific to make sure that you are picking these up alongside the chance for Bone Splinters to get cast twice. These make up the most important tempers, so I wanted to cover them here. So for our skill tree, we're maxing out Bone Splinters as this is all of our damage. We're picking up Blight all the way to the damage modifier. We're maxing out Hued Flesh. We're picking up Blood Mist all the way up to the corpse generation. We're picking up Death's Approach for the movement speed. Death's Embrace for the damage reduction. Amplified Damage for the amplified damage. And Decrepify. After that, we're picking up Corpse Tendrils all the way up to the Vulnerable upgrade. We're maxing out Necrotic Carapace, which is giving us Fortify, which is just a free 15% damage reduction. And we're only putting 1 point into Bone Spirit because 1 point is all you need. The important part is that we're picking up Enhanced Bone Spirit. Now, this is very important because every time that we crit with Bone Spirit, it reduces this cooldown by 7 seconds. And you'll notice we only have 6 seconds of cooldown. This means every time that you crit, it comes back off cooldown and it's ready to cast again. This is what's giving the build its signature machine gun playstyle, and it's super important that you cap out your crit rate for it. After that, we're picking up Dreadful Bone Spirit. Now, this one isn't that impactful, but it does help you kind of like maintain your essence. That way, when you go to the next pack of enemies, you have enough for your Decrepify, your Blight, and you can kind of just do your stuff. It's not a super impactful point, but it is nice to have around. After that, we're put 1 point into Serration to move down the tree. We're maxing out Rapid Ossification, maxing out Avulsion, and maxing out Compound Fracture. These two make up a lot of damage. They're super important. After that, we're putting 1 point in Inspiring Leader. This is just kind of like the last floating point. It can really go anywhere that you want. We're picking up 3 points in Standalone, 3 points in Memento Mori, picking up Bone Storm, and lastly, Ossified Essence. Now, Ossified Essence is a little bit awkward in the build, because after you cast Bone Spirit, it's going to decrease your mana to 0. That means all the splinters that you get at first aren't going to get Ossified Essence. But because each one of those splinters are giving you Essence, it means those ones that double proc, they're generally going to be above 50 Essence, so you do get a bit of a damage multiplier on them. So in our Book of the Dead, we are running Skeletal Skirmishers for the crit rate, we're running Cold Mages for the vulnerable damage, and we are running the Iron Golem Sacrifice for the crit damage. These are very standard, there's no real reason to pick anything else up, we just enjoy the damage. Now, in our Paragon, we're running a very standard Paragon. We're running Amplified, Essence, picking up the HP, Corporeal, also picking up the HP, picking up Sacrificial, Exploits, Control, and finally Territorial. Now, if you do not have Tyraels and Shaco, I'd recommend Territorial. But if you have all of your Uber Uniques, I'd recommend Gravekeeper because Gravekeeper is such a big damage modifier. But this build does have to stay inside of enemies' hitbox to do its damage, which means you are expecting to take a lot of damage, so definitely make sure you're not skimping out on the DR. Pick it up where you can, and when you pick up Tyraels and Shaco, feel free to grab Gatekeeper, but I would recommend Territorial until you get there. So there are a couple important mechanics you need to know before you play this build. The first one being the synergy between Ghostwalker and Shattered Spirit, which makes up a mechanic I like to call Sweet Spotting. So you can see, if I walk up to the boss like this, and I cast Bone Spirit, no matter how close I get to the boss, all of these shards go out in different directions, right? But if I cast Blood Mist to become unstoppable, and I walk inside the boss's hitbox, all of a sudden all these shards that were going off in different directions are now hitting the boss, right? This makes up the core playstyle of the build, and is what gives it its signature machine gun playstyle. This is very important to do, both on bosses and elites. Learning how to do this is what's going to make or break your ability to play this build, and it's something I would really recommend practicing before you go out and try pushing pits with it. So another core mechanic that I wanted to show off was how hard we're abusing Rapid Ossification. So this build relies on having 100% uptime in Bone Storm because the build needs 100% crit rate to be able to proc the Enhanced Bone Spirit. And this Enhanced Bone Spirit is what's giving us the entire machine gun playstyle. So upkeeping our crit rate is very important. So therefore, upkeeping Bone Storm is very important. And the beauty of this build is when you're running the machine gun playstyle of a build, look how fast my Bone Storm comes off cooldown, right? When we're just casting away, we are constantly getting these Rapid Ossification procs. And this is what's going to help keep our Bone Storm up 100% of the time and keep us alive 100% of the time, because this barrier buff that we got from this season is massive. So make sure you're making full use of this, and when you're running around a dungeon, just make sure you're firing off Bone Spirits here and there, even if they're not doing a lot of damage because you don't have everything grouped or you're not sweet spotting. Just casting these is going to give you the movement speed from Moonrise, and it's going to lower the cooldown of your Bone Storm. So just make sure you get in the habit of just casting these whenever you see a mob. So it's not just Bone Storm that we're modulating the cooldown of. Using Decrepify, we're able to abuse Blood Mist and Corpse Tendrils to constantly get their cooldowns back up because of the lucky hit properties of Bone Splinters. So let me show you how that looks. So first we get set up in the sweet spot, and then we Decrepify, and then we just go, right? You can see my cooldowns are already back. And that's because when you're firing this many splinters, Decrepify and these lucky hit chance to proc CCs, they constantly go off. And this is how I've been able to stagger bosses, like the clip I have, which should be playing in the background, that Against one Den Mother, I was able to stagger it twice in a 40-second boss fight. This build is crazy strong at applying lucky hit chances. So this last mechanic's a little bit niche, but it can help you out in a lot of situations, so it's good to know how to do. So if your Blood Mist is on cooldown, so you can't get the Ghost Walker, or say you're against a pit boss and you wanted to like set up the sweet spot without using your Blood Mist, so you can save it for like a boss mechanic echo or something, you can actually dash inside of the enemy's hitbox like this. It's very hard to do and it's very hard to space, but when you learn how to do this, it can save you in a lot of situations and it can make the build a lot more consistent and a lot more safe. So just knowing that this is a thing can help you out in a lot of situations. So just keep that in mind and kind of like practice it as you play. And yeah, that wraps things up for my Bone Splinters guide. This is a build that I've been theory crafting for the past 2 months, and it's such a fun and unique playstyle, and it really offers something that like no other build in the game offers playstyle wise. It's very rewarding to learn and it's very fun. So get out there, try it, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Thanks for watching.